Thank you. So off the bat, this session is being recorded and it will be broadcast. So welcome to our webinar, Documenting the Canadian Scholarly Journal Landscape, an open data set for the community. My name is Jeanette Hatherall. I am the Senior Coordinator for Coalition Publica, which is the partnership between Érudit and PKP to advance open access publishing and research dissemination in Canada. And I'm delighted to see so many folks join us this morning for our session. I'm joining from Ottawa, Ontario, which is on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. And as I was considering what this means in the context of our gathering today, I actually just turned to our webinar title and kind of reflected on that idea of documenting a landscape and, a practice that is sort of inherently colonial in nature, because we recognize that Indigenous knowledges and its transmission are inseparable from the land in which they are rooted. So this kind of brought me to the second part of our webinar title, which is an open data set for the community, and to reflect on the spirit of reciprocity that, while also inseparable from the land in Indigenous worldviews, I hope that spirit of giving freely for mutual benefit is something that will kind of carry us forward today in this webinar and as we collectively work towards a Diamond Open Access future. Alors ici, à Coalition Publica, nous adhérons à une politique et une pratique du bilinguisme que Gwendal va mettre dans le chat, qui, entre autres, reconnaît l'importance du bilinguisme français-anglais au Canada et qu'il existe diverses approches dans son mise en place dans le contexte canadien. Et nous souhaitons aussi y contribuer positivement. Alors, la session d'aujourd'hui découlera principalement en anglais, mais une version française des diapositives sera mise à votre disposition via le chat durant la présentation. Durant la période de questions, vous pouvez poser des questions dans la langue de votre choix. We are committed to offering you a safe and welcoming environment, so today we will be abiding by the PKP Code of Conduct for this event, and a link to the PKP Code of Conduct is also in the chat. This session is being recorded and will be broadcast on PKP's YouTube channel once it is available. The session will also be shared with registered participants afterwards. You are welcome to ask questions either in the chat or using the Q&A feature during the session, but we will reserve time at the end to answer the questions. And during the Q&A, you can also raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask a question. So unfortunately, our dear colleague Simon Van Bellen, who was meant to give the bulk of the presentation today, is unable to join us due to a small unexpected medical emergency that is not serious. But we do thank him sincerely for arranging for our colleague, Lucie Cespedes, research advisor at Érudit and co-author of the preprint Diamond Open Access and Open Infrastructures have shaped the Canadian scholarly journal landscape since the start of the digital era, which is a preliminary analysis of the data set that is the subject of today's webinar. So a huge thank you to Lucie for stepping in this morning at the last minute to help deliver Simon's presentation. So thank you so much, Lucie, and welcome. We also have two other speakers joining us today. We will invite Sarah Polkinghorn, who is Collection Strategies Librarian at the University of Alberta, to tell us a little bit about the SciFree tool and share how the data set is being incorporated at the implementation of that tool at the U Alberta Libraries. We'll then invite Mathieu Pigeon, a specialist librarian at the Université de Montréal, to talk about how the library publishing community here in Canada is using and contributing to the data set. And then finally, I'll wrap things up and let you know how you, as our community, can contribute to the data set, and that is before we launch into our Q&A session. So as I mentioned, Gwendal will be popping a link into the French version of the slides in the chat. So if you'd like to follow along en français, Gwendal va partager le lien vers la version française des diapositives dans le chat maintenant. And so with that, I welcome Lucy to deliver our presentation this morning. Thank you, Lucy.
Okay. Merci, Jeannette. Bonjour, hi, tout le monde. I'm going to start sharing. Please confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes.
Amazing. So here we go. As mentioned, I'm not Simone van Bellen, but I was also involved in this study about this documenting the inventory, the landscape, and the current state, but also with a historical perspective of Canadian scholarly journals. So just for a little bit of background, why is it important to be documented Canadian journals or in general domestic national journals? Because these are a very specific type of scholarly journals that allow for the publication of new knowledge, of course, but within a national or local context, especially around topics that have precisely a national or local relevance, importance, that may be overlooked by journals or publishers with an international or global aim, but that remain very, very important to the communities and the regions from where this research is produced. So other than that, domestic journals are often found to be publishing in their national languages. Of course, they may incorporate English, but especially in the social sciences and humanities, they are a very powerful outlet for increasing the multilingualism in the scientific field. And as I said, and this is also very linked to the accessibility of research, they often cover research that is of particular interest for local stakeholders that may be non-academic actors, such as social organizations, policymakers or decision makers, funders, NGOs, and such. So it is very, very important that academic research is available for them in the language of these communities. And restraining ourselves to the specific academic field, domestic journals are the natural channels to create and to bring together regionally relevant research communities and scholarly networks that may cluster around particular specific questions or objects of research. So with this list or with this data set that we now present, we aim to create a live, this is very important, a dynamic, updated inventory of Canadian scholarly journals that both helps contribute to better understand how new knowledge is circulated here in Canada, but that also looks into specific part of the scholarly publications ecosystem that, as I said, is often overlooked by other more mainstream resources such as the Web of Science or Scopus indexes and databases. So a bit of regarding the methodology that we followed for this study. We compiled data from many different sources, and this is one of the challenges in doing this kind of bibliometric studies. There is no single source. So we needed to merge different previous sources, secondary data, but also we needed to check it, complete it, and validate it manually in most of the cases. We did build on previous studies, which have already documented active Canadian scholarly journals. But in this one that we did, we added, as I said, a historical perspective, including also an analysis of journal creation and cessation dynamics. And for that, we added data from the ISSN, OpenAlex, the OAJ, CRKN, the Aurora catalog, also the very valuable data from the Public Knowledge Project and Période. And this is historical data was collected using the incredible tool that is the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. And furthermore, the dataset was validated using Miracle, and also checking individual journal websites for particular information. So what kind of criteria did we apply to include or exclude journals from this inventory that we put together? First of all, the journals would have to be scholarly. That we did not include popular science or science dissemination or public communication of science journals. They had to be either peer-reviewed or have some kind of editorial review, and they had to be periodical. That is, we did not include conference proceedings. They also needed to be managed from within a Canada-based institution, association, or society. They needed to have an ISSN registered, and they had to at least appear as legitimate publications. So without going into the discussion of what constitutes a questionable or some say predatory publisher or editorial practices, we needed to stick to validated and legitimate and acknowledged scientific journals. And as Janet said in her introduction, open data is cause very close to our hearts. So the inventory is frequently updated through different snapshots that we keep track of at the first QR code that you see. We also have a living version that is accessible as a very user-friendly Google Sheet in the second QR code that you see. But we do not recommend this for research projects because this is where the work is in progress. So you may have a very different or not stable version of the data. So for any research purposes, go to the first one that's hosted in the Borealis Dataverse repository. So without further ado, let's dive into the Canadian scholarly journal landscape. And starting with this idea of landscape, first of all, I'm going to be focusing on the 943 active scholarly journals that we found. This is journals that are publishing today, that are active today. As we can see in this map, there is a very strong concentration of journals that originate from Ontario and Quebec. This is, we think it due to many political, economic, but also institutional factors. And in order to analyze this wealth of journals that's distributed all over the country, we performed a multiple correspondence analysis, and we sort of draw these clusters, these hierarchical cluster analysis that allowed us to identify clusters of journals with similar traits and similar characteristics by means of identifying variables that were associated. So the first cluster, the most numerous, as you can see, the big red one, is associated with diamond open access journals. This is to say the journals that do not charge any fees for readers, but neither for authors to publish, that are often hosted by university libraries, mostly publishing in English, using OJS, the Open Journal System, to manage their editorial workflow and to publish the journal, and with a median age of around 15 years. So relatively recent journals. The second cluster that we identified is the green one in the bottom. So here we are going to find subscription-based journals, but interestingly, also some Diamond journals that publish mostly in French, that are often hosted and disseminated by Période, and with a median age of 37 years. So these are journals that have been around for much longer. Then we have another orange cluster, the third one, where we find hybrid models of open access. These are journals that are managed and published by either learned societies or associations or commercial publishers that nevertheless have a marginal presence here in Canada, and with a median age of 53 years. So here we see a very strong association of journals, the oldest journals being published by learned societies or professional associations. And finally, the smallest, the blue cluster on the bottom, is the one where we find gold open access as the model of access. This is to say, where journals are based on charging APCs for authors to publish. Again, publishing mostly in English, published by independent associations or those journals where we could actually not identify a clear or a single institution behind them. And they are also the youngest journals with a median age of around 12 years. Now, this might be of interest to many of you because as for the disciplines that we can associate to these different clusters, for the most numerous one and sharing all the characteristics that I previously mentioned, we find that the cluster number 1 is mostly associated with the social sciences, with professional fields, and with pluri or multidisciplinary journals. Cluster number 2 is mostly associated with the arts and literature and the humanities. Natural sciences are found most often in cluster number 3. And finally, the health sciences are found more often associated to cluster number 4. And finally, as per the organizations that manage and publish and are in charge of these journals, for cluster number 1, we found that universities and their departments, their faculty, are the ones that are mostly in charge of these very, very large cluster. But also we did find many student journals that were also published in-house by universities or by student associations in their own campuses in this first cluster. For the second cluster, it was interesting because we did not find a distinct or a very clear-cut governing organization type that was predominant over the others. For orange cluster number 3, we did find that societies and professional associations, as I said, were behind those kind of journals. And finally, also for cluster number 4, we found that these were not linked to a particular organization, so we labeled them as independently published journals. As for the open access, the models of access that we found, and this is in line with previous studies on the Canadian models of open access, we found that 61%, this is the majority of the journals, are diamond open access, while gold open access is adopted by only 8% of all these active journals. So we see here, as we argue in our paper, that diamond open access has been shaping, has been the horizon towards at least Canadian journals are marching to. However, as we know, open access is not only about access to research, but also about the possibility to legally reuse it, recycle it, and reapply it to other future research. And that aspect of reuse is not guaranteed across these active journals as they are today. And this is why around 27% of the diamond OA journals do not provide an open license, and 14% of the gold OA journals don't provide these open licenses either. So clear licensing of the permissions to reuse content is still something that should be looked into by journals. Furthermore, around 16% of the journals, the active journals, use subscription-based models, where there is no immediate open access option, even though they may release the content after 12 or 24-month embargo period, for example. And the remaining 15% are hybrid. This is to say, journals that mainly their content is behind paywalls, unless the authors themselves choose to go for the open route. And also, there is a very interesting relation between access and age, in which we found that journals in Diamond and Gold open access models to be much younger than those that are based on subscription and hybrid open access models. As we can see in these figures, the curves and the distribution for journals is much more leaning towards the last couple of decades for Diamond and Gold open access, where the date of creation, the year of journal creation, is much more distributed for hybrid and subscription journals. Around 84% of the journals that have been founded in the last decade are Diamond, and 16 are Gold. So we see that recently created journals are Diamond born. They are choosing to go for this kind of open access from their very conception. And also, we estimate that at least a quarter of the current open access journals weren't born open, but they are likely to have transitioned from a subscription model to some kind of open access journal type of model. As regards languages, we found that English is still prevalent in around half of the journals. That is the dark blue bars that you see here, the journals that publish in English only. And this tendency goes to around 60% in the natural and health sciences, which is to be expected because of disciplinary effects. However, the other half of the journals do declare, at least formally, that they publish only in French, or they accept French content in addition to English, and also in addition maybe to other languages. So we do see that even if we have a sort of half only English landscape, we do have the other half where we find much more multilingual landscape. So some concerns have been raised about vulnerability, and I will go quite fast in here. We can skip this. One of the factors that we found associated with the permanence of journals and the sustainability of journals is government support, which we see here is concentrated in cluster number 2. This is to say those journals that were most published in French, hosted in Période, which benefit both from the Fonds de Recherche du Québec and the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council support much more than the journals found in the other clusters. Also, some concerning figures are about indexing, especially in DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Journals, which is often the landmark for quality open access journals. There's still some work to do towards that, which has very important implications in visibility and also in the reputation and perception of journals. And I wanted to come to this because since the start of a digital era, we can say around the 2000s, the journal that sees publication has been found to mirror or to be at par with the journals that are being created. So if we take only the journals that were founded from the 2000s onwards, around a quarter of them have currently ceased publication. So this is very striking, as in the digital era, of course, the means to publish, digital means to publish, have become much more easier and accessible, but also the journals stop publishing and stop their activities at a similar rate than those that are created. So we found some variables that were related to viability and sustainability of journals. So journal age, the journals managed by societies, and student journals, on the contrary, more likely to cease activity. And so to sum up, and of course we can talk about this more in depth in the Q&A, we found very clearly differentiated journal profiles that speak of a diverse landscape. This is good. Across all the Canadian provinces, the different away types, the managing organizations behind these journals, and the languages. We particularly want to highlight the development of OJS, the role of library hosting, and the creation of Période, and the support of the government agencies that have very likely been important in establishing the conditions for journal sustainability and viability. Although this, as I said, still remains an issue, particularly for the creation of newer journals. As Janet mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, this study is already available as a preprint, and we are currently looking to publish it as an article very soon. You can access it right there. And that will be all for me at this moment. Merci beaucoup de votre attention. And I will be looking forward to answering your questions in English, Spanish, and French as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And that was really, really interesting. I do hope that we have plenty of time in the Q&A to kind of maybe go back and look at some of those other conclusions and characteristics, because that was really fascinating. I do see a hand up. I'm going to ask maybe Vanessa to put your question in a chat for now, and then we'll come back to that during the Q&A, which, like I said, we have plenty of time scheduled for that. But in the meantime, I will pass it over to Sarah to talk about the use of the data in SciFree.
Thank you, Jeanette. Bonjour, hi, everybody from Edmonton this morning. I'm Miskwichiwaskaigan on beautiful Treaty 6. I hope everyone can hear me all right. I'm a librarian at the University of Alberta, and more specifically, I'm a collection strategies librarian. I think fairly shortly it's going to make sense as to why it's a collections librarian who's speaking to you today, as we're gathered to talk about a scholarly publishing data set. So what I'm here to speak about is a current application of this data set that Lucy's just introduced to us within a practice context, specifically within a library services context. At the University of Alberta Library, we've just recently launched our local instance of the SciFree journal search tool. And we've included data from this larger data set within the search tool so that it can immediately go into action, helping to inform and raise awareness among our authors here. And the subset specifically of the bigger data set that we're using in our SciFree is active Canadian, obviously, Diamond open access journals where University of Alberta authors could potentially publish. So what I'm going to do in just a few minutes here is to give some context and some details about what we've done and how, all in the service of just giving one example of the importance and the applicability of this data set that we're here discussing. So I don't have slides, but I am just going to share simply a link to our SciFree, as I will be calling it. It's openly available to everybody, so you're welcome just to browse around, and you may be familiar with a similar instance at your own institution. So So some or many of us here will be familiar with this SciFree journal search tool. SciFree, in case you're not aware, is a small, still independent startup. It's based in Sweden. It was founded in 2018. And the mission of SciFree is really to make it easier for university libraries to help authors understand their open access publishing options. And just to give a little bit of background, we all know that one of the big current challenges for us in university libraries in Canada is that the number of transformative or so-called read and publish agreements has really proliferated at our libraries it's increased significantly just in the past few years. And I know that we all know this, but I like to put a pin in things and just, refresh us all on the argument behind this kind of agreement, which is that they should increase open access participation by relieving the burden on individual authors to have to pay article processing charges, which of course we know commercial publishers have at this point managed to pretty completely normalize in the minds of many authors as a requirement for achieving open access, right? So for instance, at my library, we currently have 23 different publishers with whom we have a transformative agreement, larger or smaller, that grants affiliated authors some degree of relief or a waiver from having to pay article processing charges. Now, so for authors here who want to publish open access, they want to choose a journal where they will receive open access publishing without needing to pay out of their own pocket or out of their grant funds an article processing charge. They need to be able to find out which journals are covered by these agreements where there's eligibility for that kind of coverage. And that's really what SciFree is supporting. That's where SciFree comes in. So SciFree, the company, built this journal search tool to give libraries a way to make the lists of eligible journals that go with all of these agreements searchable and browsable for researchers. So if you're on our SciFree page, you can search by a known title, which is a use case for many authors, right? They want to check on a specific journal they have in mind, or you can just search by any keyword you like and kind of take a more browsing approach. As far as I know, there's probably CRKN colleagues here on the call. I believe there are 20 libraries in Canada who've recently subscribed to SciFree through a CRKN, a new CRKN agreement. And of course, I want to mention very briefly that, of course, there are libraries, I'm sure, also represented among us who address this need to raise awareness among authors with their own solutions that they have developed themselves in-house. But a really key detail about SciFree is that each library that subscribes to this journal search tool has its own instance, and each of us is individually responsible for verifying and maintaining the data that underpin the search tool, right? And the data, of course, that I'm referring to are lists of journal titles, details about open access publishing options, Creative Commons and other licensing options, and then the URL that takes the author away from the library's webpage towards the author guidelines and so on for each journal. So SciFree emerged, and conceptually it's very grounded in that transformative agreement ecosystem, right? But each library that has a subscription to SciFree, we can put whatever lists of journals in it that we want, because it's up to us to manage the underlying data. And so for us at the University of Alberta Library, we realized when we started contending with how much work it was going to be to manage all of these lists, and we're still trying to figure out kind of the workflows around that. But for us, with our publishing program and we have a longstanding commitment to open scholarship, as do most of the colleagues on the call here. It just makes sense for us to incorporate Diamond open access journals, as well as journals from the publishers with whom we have these read and publish agreements. Why would we not? So it was just a matter of figuring out how to do that. And of course, that's where this data set comes in that we're discussing today. So my colleagues, Sonia Betts and Amanda Walkerock, who I know will be known to many of us here, as soon as I started ruminating about this, how could we include Diamond open access, they immediately mentioned Simon and I was able to connect with him, and he and I met initially, which was very helpful because he graciously answered some questions that I had. For instance, it was very important for our use case that I'm describing here. I needed to understand how the idea of an active journal had been defined within the data set versus one that had ceased. And the data dictionary that goes along with the data set is very good, but it was still very helpful for me to have a bit of Simon's time. And then I was able to work with the data set. I sort of picked a date and, took the data set as it existed on that date, made a note of that, and went about honing in on the section of the data that we wanted to put into our SciFree. So that involved limiting it just to the active Diamond open access journals. And then the further wrinkle within that subset is that I needed to remove the journals that are not open to authors from the University of Alberta. And the predominant category there, far and away, are the graduate and undergraduate student journals, which Lucy alluded to in her presentation. Not all student journals, like some student journals are explicitly open. They accept submissions from all over. And personally, I don't see any reason why we would exclude student journals from our SciFree, but a lot of them are kind of hyper-local, right? And they're focused on really showcasing the work of, a type of students within a given faculty or department. And then it was a bit of a process to reformat the data for SciFree, which I won't go into in detail here. But SciFree uses it's straightforward, but there's just certain consistencies that need to be enforced around how different columns in the spreadsheet are named and so on, so that then what SciFree can do is it can ingest the title list and it becomes searchable. It becomes part of our SciFree data set instantly. It can make these journals discoverable to people. So I have a couple of, for the quantitative folks in the room, here's some numbers about the outcomes of this process I've been describing. So for us at the University of Alberta Library, in our SciFree instance, that process that I have described resulted in a list of 509 Diamond open access journals from within the full data set. And so that is in addition to, we have a separate title list just for the journals published by the University of Alberta Library publishing operation, which has 73 journals on it. So overall, that's around 600 Diamond open access journals. In our SciFree data set as a whole, there are around 10,000 journals. So that means that now we have between 5 and 6% representation for Canadian Diamond open access journals within our SciFree. So there are a number of challenges, which I'm happy to speak to in the Q&A or maybe at another time. I would say conceptually for us, the biggest challenge that I don't think I haven't quite perfected the data set yet is, SciFree is oriented around the idea of the publisher or the imprint because it's from within the transformative agreement ecosystem. But of course, if you look at a list of Diamond open access journals, just the very idea of publisher is much shakier. And Simon and Lucy's data set, it actually has multiple fields to capture the idea that a journal might have a publisher, it might have a hosting library, it might have a publishing organization. There's multiple fields. And so that's something that was something that we needed to work through. And we'll see. We'll see how much time I can invest in sort of like continuing to resolve that, at least partly in my own mind. So just 30 seconds more. Next steps include, as far as I know, discussions are just kind of beginning or being rekindled between CRKN and Coalition Publica as far as how, at the University of Alberta, we're happy to have others benefit if they are inclined to pursue something along the same lines. It's just a matter of maybe we can coordinate and kind of share the work. So I know that that's ongoing. Ultimately, though, I have to say I've come to believe that even if we can share a data set like I've been describing, ultimately there is a need for some customization and specifically localization for each school that's using SciFree. So let me just thank Simon and Lucy and everybody who's worked on this data set and everyone who's contributed to organizing this event today, which we know how much work events are. On behalf of the U of A Library, it was just really excellent timing that we could make this happen, and we really look forward to continuing to collaborate with everyone on this and other things into the future. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think, yeah, having those numbers of the amount of Diamond Open Access journals that are now visible in these tools is really impressive, and so very much appreciate the work and taking the time to tell us about it. I'm going to hand it over now to Mathieu to talk about the Canadian Association of Research Libraries Library Publishing Community Engagement Team and how they have been working with us to use the data set. So over to you, Mathieu.
Thank you, Janet. So, hello everyone. My name is Mathieu Pigeon. I'm a librarian at the University of Montreal, and I'm responsible for open access and journal support. I've been in this position since October 2024, and prior to that, I worked at Période for several years. Last fall, I joined LPSET, the Library Publishing Community Engagement Team, and today I will present the work done by LPSET members and more broadly by our community of practice to clean Simon's list. I will also explain why this list is important for library publishers. So how did LPSET members and the community of practice contribute to this list? In fall 2024, Simon contacted us because he was ready to present the list to us and to get our feedback. Our contribution had two main objectives. First, ensuring that the data about our own journals was accurate and complete. And second, testing Simon's process for enabling more publishers to correct their own data. Determining the affiliation of journal is not an easy task. It can be challenging. First, we don't know every journal in our institution well. For some journals, we offer no service, and I have never talked to anyone from the journal. And for many journals, the first contact is made when they start using OGS. So, and second, the affiliation of a journal will change over time. Typically, the affiliation is based on the editor-in-chief's or journal manager's affiliation, which will certainly change as the editorial team evolves. For example, at the University of Montreal, we offer an OGS service to journals, but not all of them are still affiliated with us, even if they once were. In a case like this, while cleaning the list, I might have corrected the affiliation of the journal for University of Montreal because we offer them a service, but a colleague might have corrected it for their own institution because the editor-in-chief is a professor at that university, and they may also offer them some services. And this is only from my perspective as a librarian trying my best to fit the journal into a list. So what's the journal's opinion on its affiliation? Now, why is this list important for library publishers? Well, because this list is the most complete and up-to-date, and it gives us a clear picture of the place of our publishing model, often as we saw, small independent, not-for-profit journals, often in Diamond Open Access, in the Canadian scholarly publishing ecosystem. It also gives us an overview of our contribution as library publishers to this ecosystem. So taken separately, we may support a few journals, from one journal for the smallest libraries to several dozen for the largest one. Individually, we might think we are small, but if we change our perspective and approach the question from the point of view of the publishing model, we realize that our community, the Canadian University Libraries, acts as the largest publisher in Canada. So in conclusion, maintaining and updating the list presents challenges. As we saw, new journals are created, others cease to exist, and in some cases, it's just difficult to determine one affiliation for a journal. The question of who should keep this list up to date and how to do it is most most effectively remains. However, I don't think the most important thing about the list is its exhaustiveness regarding the affiliations of the journals. It's important, but we can live with the list being imperfect. What's important for us library publishers, I think it's the picture it paints and of the Canadian publishing ecosystem. And for all of the other specialized librarians, there are a lot of importance for of this list. So the role we play in this ecosystem is often little known, and having this list allows us to better understand and promote our work as library publishers. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Merci, Mathieu. So we've seen the impact of the list on library operations, on getting a picture of the journal landscape. But as the thrust of this call today is, not only does this exist, but it's here for the community. And as alluded to, its upkeep and its maintenance, while put out there and will be overseen by Coalition Publica, we are hoping that it become a community effort for those of us in the landscape who have sort of authoritative information on the journals contained in the list can contribute to maintaining it, correcting it, ensuring that it's up to date. So I'm just going to share right now very quickly for just the next couple seconds, if I can find my share button, which it's actually now gone from my screen. Share, there we go. This is how you access the data. So this was in Lucie and Simon's presentation. There are links to these, but essentially, if you miss it in this presentation, we will be sending the slides out afterwards. But if you forget, you can come to the Coalition Publica website, and on the Services for Researchers page, you'll see that if you scroll down, sorry, I'm going to scroll, this is going to look horrible for half a second, but you'll kind of scroll down and you'll see that there's a section for the bibliometric data that covers the Canadian scholarly journals. And here you have a whole section about how to access the data. So the link to the Borealis repository where those snapshots are. So those are the snapshots for research purposes that can kind of be stable, and you can cite which version you are using in your research. But there's also the link, as we said, to a Google Sheet that is sort of a live evolving version of the data set. So in this, you can provide comments, you can provide updates, you can suggest changes, and all of these sort of instructions are detailed in the data set. I'm not going to go into them, but essentially there are ways to suggest small corrections. If it's just sort of one here and there, you can do a comment, or you can also take a subset of it, help clean it up, and then send it back to Simon and the team for incorporation. So that's how you can access the data and contribute to its upkeep. And we do hope that you find it useful in that sense, and that you do contribute. So as promised, we wanted to leave plenty of time for question and answer. So I will stop talking and open the floor to, if you would like to, I'll say again, you can use the Q&A feature, you can use the chat, or also you can raise your hand and I will call on you to unmute yourself and ask your question out loud. I put Vanessa back on the spot because I know you had raised your hand earlier, and so maybe now is your chance, if you remember your question. Just trying to unmute. Perhaps going in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Yes, I had a kind of a tangential question. Because you guys keep talking about open access as like the kind of a gold standard, and obviously I agree, and I've been agreeing for 10 years. But I'm wondering if IA is changing something with regards to open access, considering like if the research that we make available through open access is now kind of part of how like ChatGPT and all these things are answering questions. Is there a discussion around potentially, are there people who are starting to think about restricting access to researchers as opposed to feeding these AI. So I'm not sure if anyone can answer this question, but I thought about that during your presentations. Thank you.
Lucy, did you want to maybe have a
that's the question of the moment, probably. And I do not have answers. I just have some intuitions, let's say. I would say that kind of reuses of open access material is something that we do have to live with, and it's the paradox of the common goods, the common access goods. When something is out there and it's licensed, for example, with a CC license, CC0, that allows for reuse, we need to live with the fact that it's going to be probably used for that. The question of attribution is what comes into a spotlight with when huge amounts of data are being used to train large language models, and then are fed back to us in the way of the answers that tools like ChatGPT or other more specific tailored AI tools can give us. There's also the question of ethics about that, and of the agreements that commercial publishers are doing to sell their content to AI companies in order to develop their questions. So I don't think we have seen a tendency yet to close access to material that's already in the open in order to quote unquote protect them from being used for AI purposes, let's say in general. But I think that there's definitely a discussion that is evolving, that's super dynamic, and that we really need to keep an eye on.
Thank you, Lucy. Merci pour la question, Vanessa. Dina. Oh,
I think I'm.
Yeah, just need
okay.
to, perfect.
Okay. So thank you so much for this presentation. It's really been great. I just had maybe one question around the definition of Canadian. So maybe apologies for it. But I wanted to know a little bit more about how you defined Canadian, and I think you mentioned that it was mostly Canadian journals that were included. So what exactly does that mean? And maybe a corollary question of, did you find any journals that like used to be Canadian based and then maybe moved elsewhere, and how did that play into the data set? So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Dina. That's the overarching question is how do we define national journals or domestic journals? In this case, we of course are dealing with Canadian. But of course, the line between regional, local, global is very fuzzy. And for our definition, we took journals that were associated with a Canadian institution, whether it was the publisher or the academic support or academic heart, let's say, behind the journal's project. And I think this distinction is useful because we may have journals that started as a very modest project that as they kept growing and grew stable, they moved to an international publisher, but still the editorial control remains in the hands of a group of Canadian scholars, a department, Learn Society. So yeah, there's been changes in that way. But the criteria for defining what's Canadian has to do with the presence of at least a Canadian institution behind the journal in some capacity.
Okay. Thank you, Lucy. I'll just look to see if there's anything in the chat. As far as new questions go, there's been a little bit of follow-up on the question around AI, and I'll just read them out because they are not going to appear in the recording. So just for that, Alyssa believes that research will be scraped into LLMs regardless how they're licensed. And Emily replies, we have a lot of evidence that they're happy to train on pirated works. So limiting legal open access would maybe hurt the wrong people. I see Louis has his hand up.
Yeah. Hi. First of all, thank you. I think maybe the question is more to Lucia. Je pourrais le dire en français, dans le fond, pour un change. Ma question est un petit peu sur il y a un petit peu une tendance, je crois, dans mon domaine où est-ce que il y a quelques journaux qui sont payants, qui ne sont pas open access, qui vont chercher un petit peu la plus grande partie des... confirm your speaking language, non, je parle en français. Qui va chercher la plus grande partie des articles. Ça pourrait être une erreur de ma part. C'est peut-être aussi juste les journaux qui sont les plus cotés, je ne sais pas trop, mais je pense à certains journaux là, comme Synthèse en philosophie, beaucoup d'articles fermés par contre. Alors que peut-être que les journaux open access que je connais ont tendance à publier beaucoup moins d'articles. Puis je me demandais si c'était quelque chose que vous aviez contrôlé par rapport aux proportions, parce que là, je vois que la proportion est beaucoup pour les journaux. Est-ce que vous avez eu l'occasion de regarder ce que ça donne pour je dirais la quantité d'articles qu'ils publient? Puis, sinon, est-ce que vous avez un petit peu une idée? Est-ce que ça devrait être similaire ou est-ce que dans le fond, ça sera un effet qui est quand même important?
Merci Louis, je vais faire le mieux pour te répondre en la même langue.
Espagnol,
À ce moment,
bien, si
espagnol,
quieren.
perfecto. À ce moment, on n'a pas d'analyse au niveau des articles en relation à le volume ou l'échelle de chaque revue. Bien sûr, je pense que la disponibilité des ressources humaines, des ressources financières, des budgets, des ressources aussi techniques que chaque revue a est critiquable pour la capacité de workflow qu'ils peuvent gérer. Ça est lié aussi à le chiffre d'articles qui chaque revue peut processer, évaluer aussi. La question de peer review ici, c'est très important pour la quantité des articles qui sont effectivement publiés chaque année. Et bien sûr, leur capacité technique du personnel. Alors, je ne suis pas sûre s'il y a une relation directe entre le modèle d'accès, la disponibilité de ce type de ressources pour chaque revue et après la quantité des articles qu'ils sont capables de traiter et publier. Mais bien sûr, c'est une très intéressante ligne de recherche pour approfondir l'analyse au futur.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci à toi.
Merci. Alors, that brings us to the end of our time together. That hour went by very quickly. It was incredibly interesting and rich. I would like to once again sincerely thank Lucy for stepping in so capably to present. Bravo, merci Lucy. And again to Sarah and to Mathieu for sharing how you're using the data set. And to everybody who organized this session today, merci, thank you. And everybody who took the time out of your day to join. I know time is precious, and so we really appreciate your spending it with us. Et merci et à la prochaine.